Hello and good morning. I'm Tom Tangye, part of the UK Life National Contact Point team, here together with Jessica Magnus. The webinar today is designed for those applying for EU Life funds. However, the process and tools can also be applied to any other project development and will help you to complete your funding application. As usual, the presentation will be made available after the talk online, and you'll be able to listen back for your reference. Before we start, just to quickly update you that it's business as usual in the 2020 Life call, and us as the UK Life team are here to support you. If you have any questions during this webinar, then please use the question functions to the right hand side of the screen, and we'll go through and answer them during the Q&A session at the end. So Jess, if you'd like to just knock your camera off and come back in.
I turned off my camera just to save some of the broadband speed, and I come back for the question and answer session. All right, Tom. See you later.
Thanks. So there are lots of great tools available to help you develop your project and concept note for your application. The approach we're presenting today is just one approach, but one that has been tried and tested, and that we here at JNCC know will help you to scope your project. So we'll look at the problem tree, objective tree, and refining the scope of your work. We will briefly look at the logical framework and how this technique builds on the framework from cause and effects of the problem to define the objectives, actions, and activities needed to solve it. We will then look at the log frame and how that can be used to build the framework for monitoring, evaluating, and your project. And finally, how these tools work in completing your life application and work them into your concept note or full application for climate action. This process takes a problem which may seem insurmountable, expensive, and difficult to handle, and breaks it down into smaller, manageable chunks, which allows you to identify order of works, what needs to be done, and to have the right people engaged. So that is the methodology to help you describe your project to the funder. The process that I describe will take time, but taking the time, that is 2 or 3 days of scoping and planning, a 3 to 5 year project will reap massive rewards. I'm going to explain the process quite simply, so please note that as there is not enough time to go into a lot of detail. So you know your work area, you know where the problem you have, and you have a good idea about what's causing the problem. You've also got a fair idea of how to resolve it. You'll need an idea of your project objective. Unfortunately, you need more information to satisfy funding and grant providers. So you need to demonstrate that you understand the environmental problem. This is a situation you're trying to challenge, trying to change, where you want to get to, and the scale of that. You need to quantify your problem. The quantification is important because this information is your baseline, and this baseline is the benchmark by which your project will be measured against, and I'll come back to this later. Knowing this baseline problem is an area where so many proposals fail that don't need to. You need to explain the status quo. What does the environmental problem look like? What is the situation at the moment? So, for example, there is X amount of plastic waste on UK beaches. The conservation status of UK's curlew population is declining. The air pollution in Greater Manchester is X, Y, and Z. This is your baseline. You need to explain it. As I've said, you need to demonstrate your understanding of this environmental problem. And this may be at a local or regional scale. But for life, you also need to understand the extent of the environmental problem, national, UK, and the EU context. Again, this is information that is part of your baseline and is extremely integral to a good proposal. This means you are going to have to do some research beyond your site or project area. The Commissioner wants to know how big a problem is, and the problem is across Europe, and therefore how transferable your project is. This will help them to assess the EU added value and essentially for them to gain an understanding of their return on their investment as well. Remember to check the EU Life database, as it has a similar project being done before, can you build upon this? Are there other EU programs which have researched your problem before and you are going to use their findings? If there has been, do say so. This information is used in the B1 form of your application at stage 1 concept note or stage 2 full application, or just full applications for climate actions. You need to include a summary description of your project and focus extensively on the environmental problem targeted in this section. And like I say, we'll come back to these forms later in the webinar. Then you need to consider the people who you're going to involve and at the right stage in your project development. So, stakeholder engagement. Do not underestimate the value of your stakeholder analysis. Consider your stakeholders as early as possible. You may identify additional project partners who need to be included in the following areas and potential co-financers. So, who do you need to engage with? Who needs to be involved? Is it landowners, end users, supply chain, utilities such as water companies, relevant competent authorities, license providers? The list goes on. Who will the work impact? Will it impact local people, community groups, other sectors? Consider what level of engagement each stakeholder group will need to have and what impact do they have on the project's success. If you are developing a process or a protocol or a new technology, are the main users of this technology involved in the development and the testing? Their involvement may be key to the uptake and long-term success of the project. Do you need to consider cross-border, that is transnational stakeholders, but only use these where these need inclusion is justifiable? Also, what do you need for your project part to go ahead? Which stakeholders do you need to obtain letters of support, licenses or permits from? Do your stakeholder analysis and start engaging with your stakeholders as early as possible. Bringing people in early gives them understanding, enables buy-in to the project. Issues can be resolved early and hopefully easier and support your project. Stakeholders provide further expertise and financial support. They also are critical to ensure the long-term sustainability of the project. So the forms, the administrative forms, this process is also identify initial potential associated beneficiaries, so project partners, or even co-financers, project partners who contribute finances. In the B4 form, stakeholders involved are the main target audiences of the project. So, and this is for once you've been invited to stage 2 to submit a full application. Who do you need to get letters of support from? Which departments? Who do you need to get guaranteed buy-in of results and future uptake of the project to provide long-term benefits? So you will need to have your stakeholders along with time and space. As you would probably normally do this in a room, and at the moment it's a little tricky, we would suggest using mind mapping media, virtual software, share screen interfaces with your stakeholders to get them engaged. So the problem tree analysis is designed to help you understand the wide range of causes of your problem and their causal links. A good system we have used cards or post-it notes, which can be moved around, grouped, and causes mapped as shown in the tree. I will show this process in practice a little bit later. It may be useful to start with a problem you consider to be the main problem, and then explore the factors causing this problem and their effects. So, identify all the problems, but don't hold back, don't restrict yourself, but don't forget socioeconomic issues. Try to get the real cause of the problems. So when identifying problems, remember a problem is not always a lack of something. Rather, if you say lack of time, you're describing a result of the cause or an unwanted situation. For example, instead of a lack of resource, the problem is other areas are considered higher priority. Managers do not understand the implications of the problem. There are not enough trained staff to address the situation. The processes employed are inefficient, or there may not be enough money. Just think of it as lack of irrigation equipment. Is that really a problem? Could it be the wrong crops are being grown? Irrigation channels may not have been maintained. Personnel do not know how to use the equipment. These are all things to consider. So having identified a huge range of causes of the problem, you now become more positive and define your objectives. In each negative cause becomes the positive situation you want to realise. So some negatives, unfortunately, cannot be changed into a positive. For example, no rain during dry season and heavy rain during the wet season. Measures can be taken to alleviate the problem, and these situations can, measures can be taken to alleviate the problem. These are situations your project cannot change. But do not dismiss these. They are issues which may be assumptions which could prevent your project success and therefore be included in your project later as assumptions. So, for example, your project may be progressing very well, but a severe winter could reduce the population of birds and therefore impact the project's overall success. Therefore, your assumption is the severe winter will not happen. This is a relatively quick process, but essential. This objective tree process will help you to scope and identify your actual project. That is, it will help you define which areas are essential to achieving your project's purpose and identifying areas which may not meet the eligible criteria. So this is the process in practice. It will look very different at the moment, as I've said. So use technology, virtual softwares, and to your benefit in these difficult times. This is a project being scoped, the environmental problem being reviewed. We have used cards here, so causes of the problems are written on cards, one on each card. This allows for the cards to be moved and cause links to get set out. For the problem tree analysis, we have used pink cards. For the objective tree, we have used green cards. This process, problem tree to objective tree, underpins the logical framework process. So we're going to move on into the logical framework now. Please remember that we're not going to be going into detail here. This is a simplified version. So many grant applications require the addition of a log frame in their application, like the UK Darwin's Initiative and Darwin Plus and many international grant funders. This demonstrates the value that many grant administrators put on the logical framework. It is also worth noting that some successful life applications still include the log frame as a JPEG, as it shows the logical links between the activities, results, project purpose, and their overall goal. The log frame expresses the changes in state you expect to achieve as a result of your project outlined in your proposal. It helps establish a causal link between inputs, activities, results, purpose, and the overall objective. It defines the assumptions on which the project logic is built and identifies the potential risks for achieving objectives and purpose, and therefore helps contingency planning and your risk assessment. It can be the tool from which the budget, responsibilities, timetable, and monitoring and plan are developed. The framework against which you're monitoring and evaluate your project's process and the reporting process developed. The log frame developed with your stakeholders enables full engagement and buy-in to your project. They have contributed to the development and therefore have ownership too. So, the overall goal, the thing your project contributes to. This could be a wider program of work, and your project is one of the number of projects that contributing to this high level goal. The project purpose. This is short and a clear statement of what you expect to achieve as a result of your project. Results. Results here are objects you identify in your objective tree. They are all the requirements to deliver your project's purpose. The activities. The list of activities required to deliver each result. Remember, each activity has a link to the result. The indicators here, you do not have the same indicator more than once. Indicators either process or impact related. For example, the number of individuals receiving log frame training. This is process related. It tells you nothing about whether the training was successful or not. Therefore, we could include and use an impact indicator such as 2 years into the project, by T2, evaluation scores of those having received training increased by X%, and by T5, evaluation scores of those receiving training increased by Y%. Means of verification here. How are you going to show someone that you have achieved the results you say? Is it through photos, habitat maps, surveys, increased number of species, publications, minutes of meetings, papers, articles, etc.? And assumptions here. Assumptions, you will achieve this result if your assumption doesn't happen. So you may achieve your project's purpose assuming that a severe winter does not significantly reduce bird numbers. So I hope that's as clear as it can be to you. If you do have any questions, please get back to us. So now you have scoped and refined your project through the log frame planning. You can use Gantt charts for an indicative timetable. You can then, which associated beneficiary or project partner is leading on which activity here, the staff required and their time, the travel needs, and defining your equipment. Here you are planning your project's needs against the actions you will be undertaking. Now you can cost your actions. This provides the opportunity to rescope your project on the base of your costings if necessary. Check the life financial forms. Your costings are intrinsically linked to the activities outlined in your R forms at stage 1. The evaluator will check these forms against one another. So by now you have generated a lot of information about your project, and all this information is essential to your life application. But where does it go? This table just outlines where the problem and objective tree and the log frame align with the application. But please note this is for a full application. So full application after concept note, or for climate action, this applies to you as a full con. So, and as I've said earlier, don't underestimate your stakeholder analysis. This contributes to a number of sections, and this is to make you aware of the full process. The main areas of the concept note that this process aids are highlighted here, but it's intrinsic to the development of a good full application. So we'll now focus more so on concept note, but full applications for climate action will still have many of the same fields to fill in. So bearing in mind what we have discussed, and now you have done your research and heard of your stakeholders, you need to collate everything into a concept note. Here is an overview of the forms you will have to fill in. The forms are the same as previous years, and you'll need some information on how to fill them in within the 2020 guidance document. But in general, the concept note forms are a shortened version of the full application forms. And just as a reminder, you have to submit your concept note forms to the Commission via e-proposal by the 14th of July for environment and resource efficiency and the 16th of July for the other environmental strands. So what should you include in the concept note? You need to include information about the coordinating beneficiary, description about the environmental problem targeted in the cases of environmental resource efficiency and environmental governance projects. For nature and biodiversity projects, you need to include a description of the species, habitats, or biodiversity issues targeted by your project. Furthermore, you need to include your project's objectives, the project actions, expected results, and impacts of your project, the sustainability, the risks and constraints, and project partners. So must include, your concept note must include, you need to demonstrate the EU added value of the project, understood at this stage as a contribution of the life priorities and objectives. You need to decide on the project character. For example, is it a pilot or is it a demonstration character for environmental resource efficiency projects? Or in the case of nature and biodiversity projects, best practice character. So, and then you'll have to have an indicative high-level budget. Also, a declaration of co-finance is not required at stage 2, but would be beneficial and would help the Commission to assess the feasibility of the project, so helpful to include. Please do not include any maps, images, or signed commitments in the concept note. Also, remember there is a strict character limit on each field of the concept note, and this enables it to be strictly 10 pages. So now I'll briefly go through the different forms. The B1 form is arguably the most important form of your application. It contains a summary of your project and should describe the environmental problem, project objectives, actions, means involved, expected results, sustainability, and the project topic. Please note the character limits on each heading. This is character limits, not word limits, character. What is the environmental problem you are addressing? You need to be able to describe your environmental problem within 2 sentences. If not, then it is too complicated to be solved by a €5 million project. What is the context of the project? What is the current state of play? What is your project hoping to achieve? Please note that your project must address a problem that spans the European area. What is the environmental baseline that indicates the extent of the problem which you wish to tackle? Life, like other EU funds, is increasingly results driven. Without knowing the baseline, how can you show that your project is addressing the problem and achieving improvements? Project objectives. These need to be realistic, achievable within the lifespan of the project, and provide value for money. These should be listed by decreasing order of importance, and remember that EU added value, sustainability, replicability, and transferability all need to be considered within the scope of your project, and that the strategy will need to be in place for these elements. These are picked up again further in the application. Actions and means. So what actions and means will be utilised to counteract the cause and achieve the impact and objective. Please list these main project actions and explain what, how and where will be done during the project in order to reach that project objectives. If the project success depends on the involvement of stakeholders, please identify them in this section and clarify how they will be involved. And this is where we could recommend the logical frame analysis for your project. Expected results. What's the outcome of addressing each cause of the problem? Please quantify any improvement to determine value for money. Expected results should not be the project's objectives, but they should be the outputs and quantified achievements allowing the project to reach each objective. These must be concrete, realistic, and quantifiable as far as possible. You need to think about how you will verify these improvements, i.e., what indicators you will use. Afterlife or sustainability of the project. The Commission wants to see long-term results for their investment, and you will need to demonstrate a clear strategy for the long-term continuation of the project results. This indicates, where possible, identifying sort of like the transfer and replication opportunities. And the project topic or topics. Please paste in the priority area and project topic that you'll be addressing from the multi-annual work programme or the specific 2020 guidelines for applicants. Please note that you can select up to 2 project topics, but these must be from the same priority area. So you cannot be environment and resource efficiency and environment governance and information. Just you can't. Select carefully, as your project will need to satisfy all of the elements defined in that project topic or topics. You will not lose points for selecting one, but you will for not meeting the elements of the selected topic. This section also requires the applicants to briefly describe reasons why the proposal is relevant to the project topic or topics. Continuing on, project partnership. What is the structure of your project partnership? Who are your key stakeholders, key beneficiaries? Who should detail their expertise? You should detail their expertise and expected role, including actions they will be responsible for. How will your project be co-financed by other entities? Is it confirmed? To note that project partnership and structure can be changed at the concept note to full proposal stages, but all changes must be justified and must not affect a major change in the project's ability to deliver the proposed objectives. And expected results and constraints. This section should examine the main constraints, i.e. limitations and restrictions and risks that might occur during the project. For example, if an action depends on the purchase of land and the purchase cannot be made, could the land be leased instead? How might these be mitigated for? And what overarching strategy for mitigation might be implemented? So if you have any questions, please remember use the question function or contact us at a later date via the helpline or NCT inbox. The B2 form. This form is only required for environmental resource efficiency projects and is about the general character of the project. All other strands need to provide this information in the B3 form, to which I will come on to in a minute. In the B2 form, you have to identify your project as either a pilot or demonstration character. Pilot projects are those which apply a technique or a method that has not been applied or tested before, or that offer potential environmental advantages compared to current best practice, and that can be subsistently applied to larger scale or similar situations. Apologies. Demonstration projects put in practice, test and evaluate, disseminate actions or methodologies or approaches that are new or unknown to that specific context of the project, such as geological, ecological, socio-economic, and that could be applied elsewhere in similar circumstances. For nature and biodiversity projects and environmental governance and information projects, you will need to demonstrate their project in B3, so best practice pilot or demonstration projects. EU added value of the project and its actions. Please clarify how the project contributes to one or several of the specific objectives of the priority areas of the LIFE sub-programme for environment. These are set out in Articles 10, 11 and 12 of the LIFE regulation. Please also clarify how the project will contribute to the implementation, updating and development of European Union environmental policy and legislation. Your project will need to clearly state why action needs to be taken on an EU scale. Therefore, you need to know the scale of the problem at your site, region, national, but also across the EU to demonstrate how the project links to the EU environmental policy. Budget forms. So in Form R1, you'll need to fill in your indicative high-level budget. You can see the budget headings listed on the slide, and they include personal costs, travel and subsistence, external assistance, durable goods, land, consumables, other costs and overheads. The form summarises the financial structure of the project, and by providing a budget breakdown for the project and an overview of the financial plan. So at stage 2, it will be generated automatically based on the data you entered in the technical and financial forms. At concept note stage, you're required to fill in most of the relevant data yourselves, but please note, only fields corresponding to the sums as well as the values expressed in percentages will be completed automatically, and I'll show you this in a bit. Please note that your application, if invited to stage 2, will be allowed to introduce changes to the total requested EU contribution within a margin of 10%. There is no limit on other changes in the budget, including total budget cost, as long as the total EU contribution does not increase by more than 10%. So here is the concept note template that is available for you to download from our website, so you can work offline, and I hope you can sort of see and visualize what we've been discussing here today. And also, as you can see, there are certain small red asterisks, and these denote where in our pre-screening service, we assess these fields and give you feedback. So I hope this has been able to sort of contextualize what we have spoken about today, and therefore put the information in the correct part of your forms. So what happens if your project changes between stages 1 and 2? All changes made, submitted, and the concept note will need to be justified and approved by the Commission. So please highlight any changes in the A7 form of your full application. A certain degree of change will be allowed, however, you will not be able to change the critical elements of your project which got you through stage 1, such as the main objectives, activities and actions. Proposals fail on this time and again, so make sure that doesn't happen. Also, the budget cannot change within a margin of 10% of the requested EU contribution. So this is a neat little bag of tools, and it will help you complete your application. But here's a couple of reminders for your application development. Critical components of the life application which don't come through the process are the project's longevity, sustainability, so the afterlife. How your project produce long-term ongoing benefits after the project has ended and the funding is complete. Please don't forget that your project must show innovation, EU added value, replication and transferability, and also up to 25% of the budget to fund concrete conservation actions for nature and biodiversity. So, and you must be able to simply and concisely define your project in order to sell your project to the evaluators. Remember, that's what you are trying to do here. Do bear in mind that the evaluator's first language may not be English, and they may not have the level of technical knowledge and may come from a different sector, where even terms are used differently. So be consistent in the use of terminology and use EU terms. Oh, and be consistent in the use of acronyms as well. Just a reminder of deadlines. So the concept note pre-screening opens on the 8th of June and closes on the 3rd of July. The key deadlines are concept note. So environmental resource efficiency deadline is on the 14th of July. Nature and biodiversity and environmental governance and information is on the 16th of July. For full applications, all environmental sub-programme full proposals will be for February 2021. Climate action, your full proposals are by the 6th of October, and we are opening our pre-screening service on the 14th of September through to the 23rd. And before we come to a close, I would like to highlight a few of our services which are available to you. As you know, we have had our series of webinars and they're available on our website, ready for you to refer back to. This one will be added very shortly. You've also got the concept note template and guidance, and this is available from our website as well. And as you've seen, this concept note is modelled on the e-proposal application form and will help you fill in these forms. And finally, I've included a few key links on this slide for some useful resources of information. Hopefully you've come across most of them at this stage, but do take time to go through them. They will aid in your application. But also added the new addendum, which includes the updates for the financial measures, such as the voluntary in-kind contributions for this year, and the new features related to the COVID pandemic. So please send across any questions that you may have by using the question function on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll go through them now, or alternatively, please feel free to follow up with any questions to the live mailbox or via our helpline. Thank you again for listening. Stay safe and good luck with your proposals. I hope you found this informative, and we'll go through the questions now. So just give us a moment, and Jessica, if you come back on now, and we'll go through them and see what you've been asking.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I hope you found it useful. We've had a few questions coming through during the talk regarding making the presentation available afterwards. And yes, we have recorded the webinar and it will be made available on our website very shortly. So there were a couple of other questions. Jerome is asking, is the validation process and connection to authority on the e-proposal all part of the concept note? Yes, I think, I'm not quite sure what you mean by the validation process and connection to authority, but once you've set up an account on e-proposal, you will see what you have to fill in for the concept notes. You could download our template. We have a concept note template, as Tom has already introduced or showed to you, which is modeled on the e-proposal template. So that is giving you an idea how the concept note looks like on e-proposal. And sometimes people find it easier to work offline than working on e-proposal directly. So yeah, there's more questions coming through. Jennifer is asking, are there any guidelines on using volunteer contribution as match? Yes, so we've included, Tom, if you could go back to the links page, we have included the link to the latest addendum to the guidance. So in general, volunteer time is now eligible as staff time. There are a few limitations applicable to that, which we are currently seeking clarification on with the Commission, and they have scheduled a meeting for NCPs for next week with us, because I think there was some confusion over these limitations. So we will know more by next week, but please, in the meantime, do have a look using that link. And these are the additional financial measures the Commission has introduced for the 2020 call. Phil is asking, presumably the value of in-kind volunteer time is included in overall personnel costs and within the 30% guidance of total personnel cost. Yes, Phil, so they are counting the volunteer times under the personnel cost. And as I said, there was a bit of a, it was a bit unclear because it said it would a limitation of 50% would apply, but we were not sure if that is, you know, what exactly that means. So, as I've already said, we are seeking clarification on these limitations. But in general, the in-kind or the volunteer time will be recorded under staff costs. And there's also a daily rate, I think, of 137 euros per day for a volunteer. But do have a look at these additional guidances using the link we provided. Are there any more questions? I'm just scrolling up.
Remember, if you think of anything after this is finished, you can contact us via our helpline or via the NCP email.
If we have a pilot around live long-term monitoring of the environment, is there a problem with having significant equipment investment, and is there a limit? Lawrence is asking that question. So first of all, monitoring is normally not an activity which is funded by live projects, so that might be a problem if the main focus of your project is on monitoring the environment. So yeah, maybe we could discuss that offline, Lawrence, but just to flag that monitoring actions are normally not funded. And there's also a limit on equipment and large infrastructure, which I think was, I can't remember, for infrastructure, the limit is 500,000 euros. I can't remember from the top of my head what the limit for equipment was. Maybe, Lawrence, I would recommend we discuss this offline. So if you like to contact us, and we can schedule a phone call and we can talk you through this. Jennifer has come back and is asking for partners, is it wages of standard EU daily rates? And in the annual hours of staff still 1,680 per annum. I will have to check that. My gut feeling it is the standard EU daily rate. So, but I have to double check the limits for staff rates and if there is a limit per annum. Jennifer, can I get back to you on that one, please? Okay, yeah, that's fine. Are there any more questions? I'm waiting maybe another few minutes. So you have, as we've said, if you have other questions later on, please do feel free to contact us. Yes. Offline, you know, using the our inbox and helpline.
I think that's
all right. I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So here from the UK Life NCP team, JNCC, Jessica and I, we wish you all the luck going forward with your project proposals, and we hope that you can get as many through this last opportunity for the Life Funding Programme. So thank you very much for listening.
Goodbye. Good luck.
Bye-bye.
Bye.